What kind of film genres go well together? Romantic comedies or rom-coms? Drama and comedies or dramedies? But what do you think about disaster films and conspiracy theories? Disastropathies? Either way, we're looking at a director and the films that deal with conspiracy theories mixed with impending disasters, both combined cinematically. Today we're looking at the new blockbuster film, Moonfall. Hi, I'm Rob, and this is A Constantly Racing Mind. The Oxford English Dictionary defines conspiracy theory as the theory that an event or a phenomenon occurs due to a conspiracy between interested parties, specifically a belief that some covert but influential agency, typically political in motivations and oppressive in intent, is responsible for an unexplained event. So what about the flat earth believers or the hollow earth truthers? Silly and unreasonable, but yet they endure. Or this one again. How about the moon landing was faked? This one has been around since the early 70s, and the film Capricorn 1 didn't help either. Nor did the documentary about Stanley Kubrick actually help either. Here's one. William Shakespeare was not, in fact, the author of the plays attributed to him. About 10 years ago, a movie came out exploring this theory. The film is about Edward de Vere, the 17th Earl of Oxford, a favorite of Queen Elizabeth I. Now, de Vere was a well-educated, he was a playwright, he wrote plays for the Queen, and a European traveler. So much for conspiracy theories, but they play a large part in the creation of today's film, Moonfall. Now, the man who wrote and directed the film is our modern-day master of disaster, Roland Emmerich. In 1994, Emmerich decided to explore the ancient alien theory phenomenon with Stargate. Now, the plot revolves around a Stargate, an ancient ring-shaped device that produces a wormhole, allowing travel to another Stargate elsewhere in the universe. Now, the film's central plot investigates the possibility of extraterrestrials influencing human society. Ancient humans were slaves to their alien overlords to mine a precious mineral for an alien who developed the ancient Egyptian culture. Now, it broke the record for the highest grossing opening weekend for a movie released in October. It was also a commercial triumph beyond the expectations of most film industry insiders, and it launched a hugely popular media franchise. Now, Independence Day, a 1996 alien invasion film, which was the first to gross $100 million in less than a week, and became one of the most financially successful films of all time, at one point being second highest grossing worldwide. Now here, Emmerich takes on Area 51, that there was a crashed alien craft, that the U.S. has recovered after World War II, and that the aliens are back to invade our world. However, in 2004's Smash, The Day After Tomorrow, which Emmerich returned to directing a visually heavy adventure, this time about a swiftly approaching ice age driven on by impacts of global warming. They based their idea on the book The Coming Global Superstorm by Art Bell and Whitley Strieber. While global warming is not a conspiracy theory, it does highly exaggerate its effects and timing, speeding it up from years to weeks to days. Now, 10,000 BC, a film about the voyages of a prehistoric clan of mammoth hunters, was directed by Emmerich in 2008. Now, the film involved the last group of individuals from across the sea who had escaped the collapse of an advanced civilization. Now, Emmerich directed 2012 and 2009. Now, this is an apocalyptic disaster picture based on the conspiracy theory that the ancient Mayans predicted the world's end on December 21st, 2012. It's now 2022, and guess what? We're all still here. Now, on October 28th, 2011, he released the film Anonymous. Now, I mentioned this film at the beginning of this presentation, about who really wrote Shakespeare's plays. Now, this leads us to today's film, Moonfall. Now, if you read the film's summary, it goes something like this. A mysterious force knocks the moon from its orbit around Earth and sends it hurtling on a collision course with life as we know it coming to an end. But of course, we know there is more to it than that. So this is where I'm going to sound the alarm and cry. Spoiler alert. So, like most films, we find our main characters in the middle of doing their jobs, when of course something amazing happens. In Emmerich's pictures, it could be the discovery of something phenomenal, like the discovery of the Stargate, for example, or something horrific as the polar ice caps cracking and falling into the ocean, or solar storms that are causing the Earth's core to heat up. Now, in Moonfall, we can see scenes reminiscent of Gravity. Two astronauts making repairs on some equipment in space with the Earth, the Moon, and space as the backdrop. Breathtaking, isn't it? Pleasant banter ensues before the shuttle and its crew are attacked by a swarm of AI nanobots, or nanites, moving in unison, causing havoc on the crew and losing one of its members. Now, the survivors, Shuttle Commander Brian Harper, played by Patrick Wilson, and Joe Fowler, played by Halle Berry, undergo an inquiry as to what happened. Now, Fowler was unconscious after the attack, their friend was lost, and the shuttle was damaged. Harper manages to land the craft safely, however, but NASA insists it was a solar flare, and Harper, who they say acted negligently, and is now disgraced. Now, 10 years later, our two protagonists have moved on with their lives. Harper's wife divorced him, took their son, and married a car salesman, and Fowler, who was a newlywed at the beginning of the film, is now divorced with a 10-year-old, and her ex-husband happens to be an Army general. Now, as in Emmerich's previous films, it is a nerd who discovers either the problem or the solution. Now, as a matter of fact, you will see a number of Emmerich's stock characters. Many of the characters in Moonfall, you can relate them to Stargate, 2012, Day After Tomorrow. Now, enter Casey Houseman, played perfectly by John Bradley. Jon Snow's best friend, Sam, in Game of Thrones. Your typical blue-collar young man whose boring life needs some spice. So what do? Right, you become a conspiracy theorist. Now, in the case, he somehow has become an expert in alien megastructures.
That's no moon. It's a space station.
What's that, you say? What is an alien megastructure? And impossible as that sounds, Casey has amassed a small following of tin hat individuals who, like him, have a basic high school education, I think. Casey works as a janitor at various astronomical facilities, including Griffith Observatory, where he can sneak data from the scientists and come up with his own conclusions. However, in this case, he is correct. The moon is off course. So Emmerich gives the conspiracy theorists a big win. So Casey finds a way to meet Harper and convince him that the moon is heading our way. Not only that, but it's not just a dead rock in space. In fact, it's an enormous structure that are more or less like a cage around a captured star. Now, the small white dwarf star is the energy source for this artificial structure. But who built it? No matter, it's coming towards Earth. Like any other Roland Emmerich film, this is over-the-top action, over-the-top special effects, and over-the-top suspension of belief. Now, the problem I have with the film is, in my opinion, is with the characters. Other than John Bradley's comic nerd with plenty of answers and plenty of hypochondriac madness, Halle Berry and Patrick Wilson, who are fine actors, and I love seeing them, however, they didn't stand out the same way John Cusack, Jake Gyllenhaal, Dennis Quaid, Kurt Russell, and Will Smith ever did. Bradley's Houseman falls in line with James Spader's nerdy Egyptologist, or Chiwetel Ejiofor's character in 2012, or Dennis Quaid in Day After Tomorrow, or even his cousin Randy in Independence Day, or Woody Harrelson also in 2012, as the folks who sound the alarm that the deaf ears of the bureaucracy of government officials who basically just turn a blind eye. Now, a lot of my issues with them is not enough interaction between the main characters and the supporting characters. For instance, I got to really know and get Amanda Peet's ex-wife character in 2012. Her interaction with her ex, played by John Cusack, got me to care about her and their kids. Hell, I even started to like her new boyfriend, the plastic surgeon. I even got to like Sasha, Yuri's bodyguard and pilot, and their mistress, Tamara. Now, in The Day After Tomorrow, we got to know Jack, Dennis Quaid's friends, and we got to know Jake Gyllenhaal's friends in the movie and his new acquaintances. We cheered him when Jack rescued his son. We also cheered when Gyllenhaal was also able to keep his friends safe. Now, in Moonfall, we really don't get to know Brian Harper's wife much, but we do get to know a bit about his son in the subplot where he and Fowler's kid and Nanny meet up with his mom, stepsisters, and stepdad, played by Michael Pena, who either owned a Lexus dealership or worked there, apparently making good money. Either way, he is the affluent new husband. For the kids, I felt nothing. No dialogue, no intense close-up of their teary faces. Nada. And I think in Roland Emmerich's past films, he kept the stories on the people. In Independence Day, we got to know Russell Case's kids. We know crazy Randy Quaid's character. We got a good dose of Jeff Goldblum's character's dad, Julius, played by Judd Hirsch. Other than Harper's oldest son and maybe Fowler's nanny, we don't get much interaction with the rest of the cast at all. There weren't a whole lot of random character reactions as the moon was invading Earth's atmosphere. No iconic, I'm the entitled and I will pay for a bus ride guy, or the bus driver who sees his own death coming. Or in 2012, the scientist who discovered the Earth's core was heating up. We could see him and feel for his family waiting for the oncoming tsunami. None of this in Moonfall. Now, either Emmerich spent all his money on special effects that he forgot character development and expected his three main leads to carry the whole film. That's fine, but the music is solid but not breathtaking. Now, once again, Emmerich went with composer David Arnold, whose credits include 1996's Independence Day, Emmerich's Godzilla, and several Bond films, not to mention a bunch of TV series. The concept, I think, is great for a weekend popcorn movie, a film whose action gets the adrenaline going and the images of the inside of the moon are fantastic. The nanobots are smart, trying to get a 2-for-1 shot by having the Earth crash into the moon. Not bad, huh? Now, Houseman found a way to leak all the information he has gathered online around the same time that NASA has figured out that the moon has left its orbit and is heading our way. Now, Brian seeks out Houseman as they had met, but he thought that Houseman was crazy. Now, and finally, by this time, Jo at NASA was also aware after her boss, the NASA director, holds a press conference and she confronts him about it with his "don't worry, all is fine, nothing to see here" press conference. Of course, he quits and essentially tosses the keys to NASA at Jo so he can go off to be with his family. Now, that is where she hunts down Holdenfield. You know, the guy who keeps all the secrets. That, in fact, Neil and Buzz did discover that the moon is hollow and decided to leave well enough alone. Of course, if they did know about the moon being a machine of sorts, they could have started preparations for an attack, giving humanity's over half a century to prepare. And with that, Jo gets access to her former colleague's helmet cam, where she sees the nanobots attack. Realizing that Harper may be the only one who can help her as he understands the threat, they make contact with Houseman in tow. Realizing that time is of the essence, and as we humans do, we make an effort to send a crew to the moon and set off an electromagnetic pulse device, or EMP, to knock out the moon and the nanobots. Jo does this with the help of her ex-husband, Doug, who is part of the military strategic defense team. Now, with the help of the Chinese, they assemble a launch team, but before they can launch, the moon's passing causes more destruction and the shuttle is damaged, and for a bit, it seems like all hope is lost. Doug and the other generals begin their preparations for a missile attack. However, after letting the rocket launch engineers go home to their families to await their doom, Jo and their small team of NASA launch engineers prepare for Brian, Jo, and Casey for a launch, an incredible mission. With the damaged rocket engine, they didn't think that they could actually make it to escape velocity. In the meantime, back on Earth, Brian's son Sonny, who now takes charge of Joe's son Jimmy and Joe's exchange student / nanny Michelle, they leave the launch pad and head out to Colorado, where Doug promised them entry into the Cheyenne Mountain Space Force Station. But because of robbers, they lose Jimmy's phone that has his dad's number, and they also lose their vehicle. Now, as a backup plan, Sonny decides to go to where his mom, Brenda, stepdad Tom, and his two stepsisters are held up in a vacation cabin. Where else? But also in Colorado. Back in space, our intrepid crew has turned off most of the electronics except for perhaps life support, working in to remotely launch the EMP device. However, they are detected by the AI and have to turn everything off again. They transfer to the smaller ship, and as their shuttle is destroyed by the nanobots, their ship is taken over and guided into the moon's interior. Of course, there is oxygen, so they can breathe and we can see their pretty faces without their helmets. Now, while inside, Brian is scanned, as alien ships tend to do. He finds out about the AI revolt, and most important, how to defeat the AI. A sacrifice is required. Sonny has made contact with his family and realizes that the oxygen levels are low due to gravity, somehow, and they head off to get some at a local hospital, when they are once again attacked by the same looters who took their original vehicle. They escape in Tom's Lexus, but wreck it in a crazy destruction escape scene, reminiscent of 2012's limo escape, but this one's a little bit more fiery. The car is crashed and they have to walk the rest of the way back. Space Force is destroyed, Sonny's group takes cover. Now, back in space, Brian is explaining the plan, and before you know it, of course, the EMP goes off and kills the AI. However, there's not a whole lot of worldwide cheering going on. You know, like an Independence Day, or Armageddon, Deep Impact, 2012, and I think Greenland to some extent. Now, as usual, we only have 2 hours to wrap this film up, so Emmerich speeds up the moon's descent, and this in itself would cause more destruction than the film depicts. So is Moonfall worth watching on the big screen? I would say so. The destruction is glorious and the theater's sound system booming into devastation all around. I can't see why you wouldn't. The science is bad, but then again, most of Emmerich's films' science is bad as well. But then again, they are conspiracy theories and facts don't really matter that much. The story, while ridiculous, is just as crazy as any of the other disaster films out there to date. All in all, I think this is a fun film, not quite up to Emmerich's other films' standards, but still worth watching. So as of this taping, so far, Moonfall has only made $15,153,549 domestically. Internationally, $4,819,107, and worldwide, only $19,972,656. Thanks for giving the video a view. What do you think the moon is made of? Cheese? An alien megastructure? Or is it just as we all have been told, a dead rock that lovers cast their gaze on when thinking about spending their lives together?